All right, good evening, everyone. Welcome to the Berlin Board of Education Town Hall style meeting on April 29th, 2024. The Board of Ed, we decided to call this a special meeting at the very beginning of budget season, just in the event anyone wanted to come out and ask the board questions regarding the potential cuts or anything related to the budget. So typically during our audience of citizen portion of our meeting, we don't respond to questions. So this evening, myself, the superintendent, or any other board members have the opportunity to respond if, we have an answer. If not, we can always follow up after. We haven't done this type of meeting before. We just figured that it would be an opportunity to be present and answer any questions. So tomorrow is our referendum, and the budget that was sent to referendum is a 2.75%. And we do have a list of the potential cuts, which is on the back table, if you would like to reference it. So would any other board members like to say anything before we open it up and see if anyone would like to approach the board?
We agreed on the 6.39% increase. There were great reasons for that. The staff, the administrators, superintendent, and our board committee worked very hard to get to that number. The board approved that number, and I just hope that you will consider that when you vote tomorrow, and I encourage you to take into consideration our kids and our schools.
Anyone else from the board like to share anything? Okay, thank you. All right, so if anyone would like to approach the board, just come on up, state your name and address. We have to start it out with the pledge, yes. Forgot, we don't have our typical agenda, so we will, before we open it up for public comment, we'll start out with our Pledge of Allegiance. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you, Brian. All right, so we have one person coming up. Just state your name and address for the record.
Cornell Boudria, 115 Skinner Road. I'm here tonight, to advocate for a better budget. I believe that the budget that's on the ballot is a bad budget. It does not meet contractual obligations, which based on the board-approved budget is at least 4.2%. Doesn't even meet the budget ask, or that's approved at 6.39% halfway. Doesn't even meet the rate of inflation from last year into this year. It's a bad budget. The loss of sports, particularly at McGee, in freshman sports at BHS, could be devastating to a lot of children, to be able to offer them a chance for social outlet, social engagement, emotional outlet, emotional connectivity, to compete, right? That's what this town is. It's a sports town. Do we want to cut sports? Is that what we want? Is that Berlin pride? I don't think so. What about ESS? Mental health services. We want to get rid of that? Not only is it a cost savings to keep that program in the school district, it is a lifesaver. We should not be implementing austerity measures in this town. We are not top-heavy. It is unnecessary. It is irresponsible. It is a bad budget. Vote no too low tomorrow. Thank you.
Thank you. Would you like to provide any clarity or anything? Any follow-up? All right, go ahead, state your name and address for the record.
Hi, my name is Ariana Deanna. I live at 250 West Lane. My parents always talk about why they moved to Berlin. I'll give you one guess: to give my brother and I a good education. My brother is in 7th grade at McGee, and I will be there in the fall. My parents have been talking about the town budget for the last few days. From the sound of it, many positions and activities may be cut. The one I am most concerned about is sports at McGee and freshman high school. I play basketball. It is my favorite sport to play. I'd be very sad if they cut these activities. Sports are important to me because it is healthy to move, and I love playing on a team with my friends. Playing sports has taught me what sportsmanship is, how to be a team player, has increased my self-confidence, and is a lot of fun. Berlin education system hasn't failed me yet. I hope you don't fail me now.
Thank you. I would like to provide some clarity. The F&O committee didn't, it was really hard to go ahead and determine what cuts we would propose to the board. We couldn't just go after all teaching positions. We had to evenly distribute it across the spending categories. It's not fair to take all from the classroom or all ESS or all athletics and extracurriculars. It was, we did have more than one meeting where we had to discuss it, and it's the hardest part of being on the committee and serving the board is determining what is going to get cut, where it's going to get cut from. So, I know the sports and the ESS keep coming up, but it wasn't done for shock value, or it wasn't done to hurt the children. It was actually done to have the least impact, because, there's other places that could be reduced that could have a greater impact. So it's a really challenging and difficult decision to make, but, the board hasn't finalized these cuts. They're just proposed in potential at this point. Would anyone else like to approach the board?
Tracy Wolski, 276 Lower Lane. I have nothing prepared, however. As a business person, it just feels like a very irresponsible budget, and I appreciate your support and what you initially suggested the budget to be. It's unfair that the town would agree to go less than what our contractual obligations are. It's just bad business. So I hope that you guys continue to support this, and we'll do everything that you can to make that budget a little bit stronger for the Board of Ed and for the kids in our school district. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else like to approach the board? All right, would any board member like to share anything before we conclude this evening?
I just want to sort of follow up and say that I did vote for the higher budget as well, and I no longer, well, very soon will no longer have any kids in the school system, and it's one of the reasons I wanted to be on the board at this point, is as a community member with no longer as, I think that's not at all how my kids hear me. So anyway, I do support the community that this school and the public school system here in Berlin brings, and I know there's a lot of people that don't feel like they have a stake in this, but they do, and I hope that they will actually sort of think about this in a community sense. The sports, the ESS, the extracurriculars, that's what builds this community. At the last board meeting, I spent a little bit of time trying to talk about the vibe that Berlin has as a public school system, and I think that's what sets us apart, makes us a nice community to live in, a place that people want to buy into. And, so for those of you that are out there that maybe don't feel like you have a claim in this, you do. This is for your benefit, staffing these schools, and I looked at this budget long and hard, and it's something I have some experience with public budgets. There's no real fat in here. There really isn't. So, I hope that you can talk to your friends if you're in favor of, not approving the budget as is, and get them to vote whether they feel like, they have kids in the system or not. It's not about that.
Thank you. You know, I think this year in our budget presentation on slides 5 and 6, we had what's right in Berlin Public Schools. And I think it's really important for the board to be proud of and highlight all the wonderful things Berlin Public Schools does and provides to our students, and how we are a critical component of this community and driving this school system is able to drive our community forward. For instance, the real estate market speaks for itself. And I just think that, you know, the board stands behind what's right in Berlin Public Schools. The board wants to fund it, and we want to be able to continue to attract and retain quality staff and faculty members who are doing everything that they can for the students of Berlin Public Schools. You know, when I first got on the board 8.5 years ago, I didn't have children. Now my oldest is a student in Berlin Public Schools, and I am seeing how phenomenal he is doing, you know, through this system, and I couldn't be prouder myself. You know, and as my youngest gets ready to go to the schools in 2 or 3 years, I want this school system to still be as strong as it is today. And I think it's important that we continue to, you know, fund it in a way where it's what's best for students and it's what families expect. Yep. Any other board members like to say anything?
Speak.
Mm-hmm.
I've been in the district 31 years, and each year the budget is very challenging. This year in particular, if you look at the cuts that are being made, it does go across the board. But I think what's even more concerning is last year was the highest budget increase that I can recall in my 31 years in the district at 3.6. It really wasn't 3.6 though. There was over $350 of ESSER funds, which are grant funds that were to be used, that we were directed to use with the Board of Finance and the Town Council. So you take the 3.6 and you add 350,000, it's really another 0.7. So we were more like 4.1, which gets us closer to the contractual obligations last year. So being at a 2.75 with a budget that consists mostly of programs and staff, at 80% of our budget, 81 is actually programs and staff, we have nowhere else to go but to go after programs and staff. Unfortunately, you know, losing 2 administrators in this budget, if this moves forward, losing teaching positions, losing programs such as ESS and sports that we know make a difference to children. I hope that the community comes out and supports the budget, but I also want to say that if you look at similar towns, we talk about towns in our budget, and there's a lot of talk back and forth. Why do you look at other towns around us? I can tell you where budgets are settling in other towns adjacent to us are in the 5s. So it's the same. The part that concerns me moving forward, and Julia touched on a little, the decisions that are made today will impact the district for years. Who we're able to bring in for teachers that look at the district and say, every year do we go through cuts? Am I going to move from another district and be cut? There's definitely a teacher shortage out there. That shortage, I'm on a committee at Southern Connecticut. There's not enough teachers in the prep programs to fill the vacancies that are throughout the state. So we're very fortunate in Berlin that we're able to attract and retain quality teachers. I don't want that to change because the impact for the future, I mean 10 years down the road, teachers typically stay. If we're not that attractive district for teachers, regardless of how much we want them to come, they're going to have many options to go to other districts. We want them to think Berlin because we know the best teachers, best administrators make the biggest difference with our students. So I encourage you to look at the budget and bring us back to a level that allows us to maintain programs and staff.
Thank you. Would anyone else like to approach the board before we conclude this evening's meeting? Or would any other board members like to share?
I just want to say that I don't know what's going to happen if, let's say, the entire town voted no, too low. I don't know how much we'd actually get after that. And so my hopes, even if that happens, I'm not sure that we're really going to get tons and tons and tons of money to fill our contractual obligations. My concern is what happens next year and the year after. We say this before, if any, even if only 1, 5 of these, 10 of these items are cut, to get those back is almost impossible. Once we start cutting things, each year our budget's gonna be higher because of our contractual obligations. I mean, it's just, and look at inflation, look at everything around us. And so my concern is, here we are at this really low budget, okay, where can we go? What's gonna get cut? And unfortunately, if it's cut, I just wanna know if it's gonna come back and how we're gonna be able to get it back, whatever's cut. I do see value in all the programs that we have. I do see value in our sports. I mean, we got to start our kids young in a lot of things. I'm from an athlete. I mean, come on, I got my kids all boys. So sports is a huge part of our lives. But I also see the ESS program. There are stories that the public doesn't hear about our students. It would shock you. That one really cut me because I was like, oh my gosh, I know some serious incidences that have happened. It's so sad. If that was my kid, I would be flipping the heck out that they were gonna cut something that big. I don't know what we're cutting. I mean, I know this is just an idea, and I'm a mom here, but I am concerned. I mean, please, however you're supposed to vote, go out and vote. My concern is next year if we're gonna be able to get this stuff back. Or other things that we may need then.
Thank you. Hello, just state your name and address for the record.
Imelda Mangelo, oh my goodness, 86 Devonshire Way. I wasn't sure exactly what to focus on in speaking tonight. There are so many different facets of what is going on with this budget. It is definitely underfunded. 2.75 is nowhere near where we would like to be. It doesn't compare even to last year. I appreciate that the town sent out the notice that the referendum was coming, and they indicated in there the amount that they were giving to the town budget and the amount to the school budget. I wish that at least it was even, or the percentage was a little higher for the school system, for education, which is the foundation of what we are building with our kids, and what I firmly believe that makes the town be what it is. So I really wish that the Board of Finance and the Town Council would reconsider at least evening the percentage or potentially increasing it. I was saddened to see that the lead teacher at McGee is back on the list. I can only imagine how hard it must be to manage a middle school when the children are going through so many different changes and still during our environment, and then also to see the lead teacher coupled with the mental health services of ESS. I mean, that is just going to be a huge blow to middle school, and I hope that both don't happen. I would hope that neither happens. I would hope that there are some solutions to sports. I know this is not a popular comment in Berlin, but maybe it's a pay-to-play scenario where at least they're not removed entirely, but the families are given an avenue to actually have sports and have, some of the activities that are out there. The other part I wanted to focus on is it almost feels, and I know this is a Board of Education meeting, however, the Board of Education needs to be working with the Board of Finance as well as with the Town Council. And it just, as a parent, from what I've seen of the videos, because I have missed a lot of the meetings, it appears that the Board of Finance is upset with the fact that the Board of Education and the superintendent figured out how to ensure that more cuts did not happen last year. Yes, you published what potentially could happen, but I thank you for the fact that you were able to find solutions and not actually go to the list and cut. And I'm amazed that that is not appreciated. And it almost feels like you're being punished because you actually did that. And it almost feels like, well, last year I gave you this much, this year I'm going to give you less. Why should it be that way? It should be more of a scenario where we are looking at what our education system needs and be able to provide that appropriately. And I hope that parents come out and vote no too low, which is what I would hope everyone will do. It goes back to the Board of Finance and they reconsider, as well as the Town Council. Thank you.
Thank you. Would anyone like to share anything? Anyone else? I've said this, I said this at our March 6th meeting, and I will say it again, there's nothing more that I want than for Sal Bornero and I to work together and have a functioning relationship. I've said it multiple times, and I will stand by it. I'm authentic and sincere in those words. I mean it, and I don't want to have a tense relationship with the Board of Finance. But what I do want is to advocate for the children, and that is our job, and that's why Connecticut General Statute has a separation between the Board of Education and the Board of Finance in the town, and that is it. We serve our separate entity. We don't answer to anyone else. We can work together. That's what I want. I wholeheartedly, sincerely want that because that's what's going to be best for our town, for the kids, for the taxpayers, for everyone.
George Miller, 1231 Orchard Road. I'm also a Board of Finance member. I take a little bit of issue when you keep coming back to this separation between the Board of Education and the Board of Finance. I've read the state statutes. I agree with you 100% that we have no place to tell you where to invest your money in the education side, okay? I agree with that wholeheartedly. It's in the statute. However, we have, in my opinion, and in the statute as it's written, every right to know what you're doing with them, not what you did with the money, not telling you what you can do with it, but we have every right to know, or every right to ask, what did you do with the money? And you keep coming back saying, you don't have a right to know that. I don't have to tell you that. And that is absolutely not what the state statute says. Nowhere in the state statute does it say that you cannot have a conversation with us. I'm sorry.
Thank you. I don't want to turn this into a back and forth, but I do provide the information, but it's how that information is asked and the way it's asked, and I've said this before. I've said it to the mayor, I've said it to you guys. When it's coming through email in a demanding type of way, that's where I'm going to separate the roles as outlined in the state statute. A phone call, a meeting, anything like that, I'm more than happy to come to the table because at the end of the day, that is what's best and right for the children of Berlin Public Schools, all stakeholders in our community. Would anyone else like to share anything?
I believe on March 6th meeting that we had a joint meeting, there was a document shared that showed in detail how we saved some of the positions. I think that was very clear. So I am confused by that.
With all due respect, it was asked for in July,
Not during the FOIA.
August, and it was stonewall until March. At a point in time, a little bit late in the equation to understand with regards to the future Board of Education budget that we had a couple more weeks to put together. So, with all due respect, it was stonewall up until March.
Would you like to share, or do you want me to answer that?
You can answer it now.
Yeah, so when Sal Bornero sent a FOIA request for that information back in, I believe, December, we did provide that same exact document, and it is in the email that I sent. So that document that was provided on March 6th was also in the FOIA response, so we provided it months prior. That was not the first time the Board of Finance received that information. If you want to speak, you have to come up to the microphone, state your name and address for the record.
Sal Bornero. I'm the chairman of the Board of Finance. I think there's, one of the things that there's an issue with is communication, really. I asked twice for that information with respect to last year's, what cuts did you make, and specifically, what funding did you use if you didn't make the cuts? Twice in a row, you denied it the first time, and then the second time you didn't even respond to me. So that's like 5-6 months after the first request. So let's just make sure the record is clear. The other part of it is, I look out for the children too. We want to fund the Board of Education. But what people have to understand, the last 6 years, okay, the Board of Education has asked for a 4.5% increase on an average basis. They received 2.5%. and they made it work with 2.5%. Plus, they had surplus budget with that 2.5%. So I've been here many, last 6 years where we're falling off a cliff, okay, if I don't get 100% of what I'm asking for. And that hasn't happened. You've increased staff. Student enrollment has decreased throughout those years, and you continue to put programs in, which is great. You increase staff. So you haven't made any major cuts. So as a matter of fact, the 2.5% covered all your contractual requirements on average. So every time I hear that I need 6% or we're going to fall off the cliff, that's not the case. And every year I'm being told, well, this year's going to be different than last year. Well, the facts are, in the last 6 years, you've asked for 4.5% on average, you've got 2.5%, and you've had plenty with increasing staff and adding programs and doing a great job for our students. Thank you.
Thank you. We have had budget anomalies, which I think are important to talk about with the ESSER funding, COVID pandemic, so on and so forth. So that did give us flexibility to do certain things with the budget. But, just so everyone knows, any requests, either were specific as to why they weren't provided the separation, or they were responded through FOIA. But what would you like to share?
I just think it's important to note that in our document, it states the number of staff members that we have in each category. So when you said that the staffing has increased, I think looking at those numbers shows a different picture than that. And as far as the student population, it's been very close to leveling off the last 2 years. And with that being said, just because the population decreases does not mean the student needs are not different than what they were before. And I think that's important to note. And the message is that, it's been said numerous times, you did okay with, you did okay with, you did okay with. My feeling is, and I'm the superintendent, is it's my job to make sure we do okay with whatever we're given and do the best we can for the students. The point to being is, my understanding, we're reading the statute, is the Board of Finance job is to set a number. And the public's job is to say whether they agree with that number or not. And it's the board's job to decide how that money is spent and direct me how it's spent for the district. So to me, if the public is not okay with that number, even though some may say it's okay, or it's okay, you did okay with this or that, that's up for the public to decide. That's why you have a public referendum. So, do I think that we're going to do the best we can regardless? Yes, we are. Do I think there was an anomaly I spoke of? There was $350,000 of additional funding in last year's budget that is not there this year. It's not accounted for. It was tied directly back to staff and ESSER funds. So the 3.6 last year, I just want to say it one more time, the 3.6 was more like a 4.1 because of that 350. That 350 is not there, and we're starting off at 2.75. So they're definitely, and I said before, and I want to just say, I believe, and the board has directed me, unless they direct me different, that the budget is worked on starting in October. It doesn't usually end until the beginning of June. If there's anomalies in the budget that allows us to put programming back in that's best for student or to add additional staff, I don't think, and I haven't been told, if I'm told by the board, I'll do that. If we can do that, we always try to do what's best for students. And if that is putting them back in and we can afford to do so, then we've always taken that charge to do that.
Can people come up? Or it's only once, right?
I don't know.
I think we're
I
only
don't-
doing once, sorry. Okay, we need a. So, Imelda, sorry, I don't want to cut you off, but I just also want to make sure we maintain, our expectations. And if we start letting, various people do this, then it's just going to be an out-of-control situation, or potentially. So you can talk to the board after about it, and we can talk more about it. If anyone on the board would like, or the superintendent would like to add any concluding thoughts, we'll do so. And then we can, close the meeting. Anyone have anything else they'd like to share? Would you like to add any concluding thoughts?
I'm all set. I think the biggest thing is there was a time when it wasn't this contentious back and forth, this contentiousness. There was a level of trust. There was a discussion that happens back and forth. You know, there's years that it said, well, the achievement's not good in Berlin. Well, I can tell you, we've shown the data, the achievement is strong in Berlin. We're ranked in the top quartile, 3 through 8, based on standardized test scores. And that's not the only thing to look at. Also looking at where students are going to college, where they're going right into the career field, what courses we're offering, and just the well-being of students as compared to other communities. But that being said, the level of tension, the amount of time that is spent in the budget and in this process takes many away from doing other things that's best for students. So, you know, when Julia speaks of like to have a positive relationship, there's nothing more as a superintendent that I would like to have a positive relationship with the Board of Finance and the town council too. I think that the school is part of the community and that it's not one against the other. It's everyone working together for what's best for the community.
Thank you. All right. Anyone else from the board? So we need a motion to close, to adjourn. Do we have a motion to adjourn? Do we have a second? So the motion by Brian, the second by Jen. All right, all those in favor? Aye. Opposed? 6-0. The meeting is adjourned at 6:33. Thank you so much. Thank you, everyone, for coming out this evening, and don't forget to vote tomorrow.